Hello, everyone, I'm Marilyn, and I want to share a cautionary note with you all. My story involves some deeply challenging experiences with abuse. While I'll keep the details brief, I feel it's important to highlight certain events to shed light on the difficulties I faced with someone who was supposed to be family. Marrying my now ex-husband, Henry, is something I deeply regret. At first, Henry seemed like a wonderful person, and his family appeared equally admirable. His mother, Kayla, was involved in charity work, and his father, Bruce, was a successful businessman who made sure his family never lacked for anything. They seemed like the perfect family, and I was thrilled to join them. But after marrying Henry, things took a darker turn, primarily due to Kayla's behavior toward me. Her treatment started with small, petty actions, like hiding my glasses, phone, and purse, leaving me distressed as I searched for them while she watched, amused. As time went on, the acts grew more malicious. She would ask me to handle scalding hot pots, deliberately causing me pain. One instance stands out: she added fish sauce to a dish knowing I was allergic, causing a severe reaction that made me miss an important event. She would demand hours of cooking from me only to throw the food away afterward, denying any involvement or claiming these actions were accidental. The cruelty escalated further when, at a family gathering, she intentionally caused me to slip, trying to embarrass me in front of everyone. After enduring this for months, I finally confronted Kayla and asked for my husband's support. I demanded to know why she was targeting me, expressing how utterly exhausted I was by her behavior. Her response was pure denial and deflection. She accused me of being overly dramatic, insinuating that my complaints stemmed from jealousy, an accusation that was both baseless and deeply hurtful. Despite Kayla's outward image as a charitable, respected community member, her actions behind closed doors painted a very different picture, one that was difficult to reconcile with the image others had of her. What was even more shocking was the indifference Henry showed toward the abuse I was enduring from his mother. It became clear that Kayla was manipulative, expertly hiding her malicious actions behind a facade of innocence. And despite knowing exactly what was going on, like her dangerous tampering with my food and the deliberate misplacement of my belongings, Henry shockingly sided with her. When I confronted him, urging him to acknowledge his mother's abuse, he dismissed it outright. "You're being ridiculous, Marilyn. My mom would never do that. It's all in your head," he said. His response left me stunned. He echoed Kayla's claims that my worries were simply a result of jealousy and paranoia, completely ignoring the evidence of her malice. His denial of the truth was bewildering, especially from someone who had once shown me love and care. It felt as if I had been struck by lightning, blindsided by his complete disregard for my well-being. That's when Kayla intervened, threatening to kick me out of their home and telling me I was unworthy of their family. She even suggested that Henry could leave with me, hinting at the potential loss of his inheritance if he took my side. Henry's response crushed me. He sided with his mother, reassuring her of his loyalty and promising to correct my behavior. His readiness to dismiss me to preserve his standing in the family exposed a painful truth: Henry's loyalty was not to me, but to his future wealth. We had been living under his parents' roof, their insistence on it, with Henry working for his father's company. While he had some assets, he owned no property of his own and was heavily reliant on his parents for financial security. His sights were set on his father's wealth, and he wasn't about to jeopardize his inheritance by supporting me against his mother. This realization made it clear how deep Henry's greed ran, and how far he was willing to go to protect his interests, no matter the cost to our marriage or my well-being. Bruce, my father-in-law, was often away on business and remained oblivious to the turmoil brewing within the home. I never imagined that Henry, my husband, would choose not to stand up for me. His response to my plea for support was nothing short of shocking. "Marilyn, what's wrong with you? Do you want to risk our place in this family?" he asked dismissively after I shared the details of the abuse I had suffered at the hands of his mother. Feeling disheartened, I shot back, asking, what kind of partner would prioritize his future security over the well-being of his spouse? His defense was equally disheartening. He argued that it was unreasonable for me to expect him to confront his mother, suggesting that doing so could jeopardize his inheritance. I pressed further. "Is your inheritance more important than our marriage?" I suggested that we could start fresh, away from his family's influence, even if it meant living more modestly, but he dismissed the idea immediately, insisting that we could never afford such independence and demanding that I simply endure his mother's treatment without complaint. In that moment, the truth hit me hard. Henry had chosen his path, and it was not the one I had envisioned for us. He was not the partner I believed him to be. Feeling isolated and unsupported, I made a decision. I would not let Kayla's manipulations defeat me. Instead of fleeing, I would expose her for who she truly was. My plan was daring, yet straightforward. I discreetly gathered footage from the house's security cameras, documenting Kayla's abusive actions. I carefully compiled the evidence into a video, setting it aside for the right moment, Kayla's upcoming birthday party, which would be attended by family and guests, including Bruce, her husband. When the day of the celebration arrived, Kayla was the picture of grace and warmth, especially in front of others. Her behavior toward me was surprisingly pleasant, likely because of the company. It was the perfect opportunity to reveal her true nature. My resolve was firm. It was time to expose Kayla's cruelty without making a scene. I played along during the festivities, biding my time. When the birthday cake had been served and the moment felt right, I stood up and addressed the gathering. "Thank you all for joining us to honor Kayla on her special day," I began, my voice steady. "Many of you are familiar with her reputation as a kind and generous individual. Today, I prepared something to showcase just how remarkable my mother-in-law truly is." I gestured toward a screen set up for the occasion. "Instead of merely talking about her deeds, I've compiled a video to give you all a closer look. Please enjoy." As the video played, it revealed the truth of Kayla's actions, and the facade she had so skillfully maintained began to crumble before everyone's eyes. I was ready for whatever came next, knowing that I had friends who would stand by me at a moment's notice. After years of enduring mistreatment, my resolve had solidified. I was determined to stand my ground and expose Kayla's duplicity for everyone to see. My concern for what my husband or his mother thought of me had vanished. I was beyond caring. The reaction to the video was immediate and intense. The guests were visibly stunned, while Kayla and Henry were left speechless, caught off guard by the revelation. Bruce, who had been distant due to his business commitments, was understandably shocked by what he saw. When the video ended, it was Bruce who broke the silence, demanding an explanation from Kayla. Kayla, desperate to protect herself, tried to dismiss the footage as manipulated. She insisted she was innocent, accusing me of malice. Her attempt to deflect blame only fueled my determination. The audacity of her claims, suggesting that an entire year of abuse was a product of my imagination, was staggering. I watched, wondering if anyone could still be fooled by her lies after witnessing such clear evidence of her actions. Calmly, I addressed Kayla's attempts to discredit me. "So, you're accusing me of tarnishing your reputation? How about we involve the police and see if they think these videos are fake?" I suggested, keeping my tone steady. Kayla scoffed at the idea, dismissing the police as a waste of time and insisting that the footage was nothing but lies on my part. But the mention of law enforcement clearly rattled her. She hadn't expected me to make such a bold move. This was a step too far for her, and her panic was evident. The revelation of her actions had already caused ripples among her family, but to my surprise, some of Kayla's colleagues from the charitable foundation where she worked were also present. They looked shocked, likely messaging their superiors about what was unfolding before them. In a desperate attempt to salvage her image, Kayla tried to play the victim to Bruce. She lamented how I was supposedly plotting to have her arrested, claiming I was the one causing trouble. She hoped Henry would back her up. Henry's feeble defense only made things worse. "It's not what it seems, Dad. Marilyn's overreacting. Mom's been nothing but kind," he stammered, trying to defend the indefensible. This moment underscored Henry's complete indifference toward the abuse I had suffered. Bruce, catching on to the fact that Henry knew what was happening and had done nothing about it, was visibly shocked. It was becoming clear to everyone that Henry's priorities were seriously skewed, that he valued his inheritance and the luxury of their grand home more than my well-being. Bruce, a man of principle, was appalled not only by Kayla's actions, but also by his son's lack of action. His reaction confirmed what I had hoped: he would not stand by idly. His moral compass and sense of justice made him an unexpected ally in my fight for justice. His anger was palpable, signaling that he would not let this go unanswered. This was a turning point. The true nature of those around me was laid bare, and the stage was set for what would come next. When I shared with Bruce that Henry had dismissed my reports of abuse, claiming it was all in my head, his face said everything. It was a pivotal moment when Bruce realized just how unfairly Kayla had been portrayed. His shock was evident. He couldn't believe I hadn't approached him sooner, but I explained my need to gather undeniable evidence of Kayla's cruelty, fearing that without it, my word would be doubted. Bruce's support came swiftly and sincerely. He apologized for his son's failure to protect me and expressed regret over not intervening sooner. He even gave me his blessing to involve the police. a stance that caught both Kayla and Henry off guard. They had always believed their family's unity would shield them from any external scrutiny. Kayla's desperate plea to Bruce, attempting to paint herself as the victim of an unfair accusation, fell on deaf ears. Bruce's patience had worn thin. He condemned both Kayla and Henry's actions, declaring his intention to divorce Kayla and disown Henry. The stunned silence in the room spoke volumes. Kayla and Henry, who had long manipulated situations for their own benefit, found themselves on the receiving end of a firm, unwavering decision. Bruce's declaration of independence from them was met with approval from the guests, signaling a clear break from the past. To my surprise, Kayla's colleagues, who had witnessed the truth, now stood by me, offering their support. Kayla was left to face the consequences of her actions and the wrath of an irate husband. Her and Henry's final attempts to sway Bruce were futile. Bruce, fueled by undeniable evidence of their wrongdoings, remained resolute. He denounced Henry's greed and cowardice, affirming that I deserved far better than I had received. In a dramatic turn, Bruce prioritized integrity over familial ties, proposing to sever all legal and financial connections with Henry and Kayla. Despite their protests and disbelief, Bruce stood his ground. His stance marked a significant departure from the past, signaling a new chapter of accountability and justice, and paving the way for healing. Even as Kayla and Henry desperately sought forgiveness, Bruce's resolve remained unshaken. The revelation of the extent of Kayla's cruelty was a deal-breaker for him. The shock of discovering how monstrous his wife could be was too much for him to bear. Kayla's reaction to his decision was as if she had been struck by lightning. Henry, teary-eyed, pleaded for forgiveness, ignoring the true victim of their actions, me. The unfolding drama exposed the true priorities of Kayla and Henry. Wealth and social standing far outweighed any sense of basic human decency. Henry's distress over losing his inheritance, rather than the torment inflicted upon his wife, spoke volumes about his character. Kayla, too, resorted to tears, but not in an apology to me. She wept in an attempt to sway Bruce from making his drastic decision, pleading for forgiveness as though the betrayal could be brushed aside as a mere mistake. Their apologies, once directed at me, now rang hollow under Bruce's pointed scrutiny. I couldn't help but recoil from their belated apologies, recognizing them for what they truly were, self-serving attempts to regain control. I made it clear that I would not accept their shallow regrets. Their remorse wasn't born out of genuine contrition, but from the consequences they now faced. With their actions exposed for all to see, they had failed to acknowledge me as a person worthy of respect and kindness until it threatened their comfortable lives. Their pleas for reconciliation, invoking family and forgiveness, were nothing more than empty words. I had grown too much to fall for their deceit again. Their attempts to make amends were too little, too late. I stood firm in my resolve to break free from their toxic influence, knowing I deserved far better than the treatment they had subjected me to. As Kayla and Henry pleaded for forgiveness, calling for a return to our so-called perfect family, I couldn't help but laugh. The irony was striking. In what universe does a perfect family include abuse and neglect of one of its own? Their apologies, self-serving and hollow, felt more like bad jokes. Empowered by the truth of their actions, I faced them with a dismissive smile. You think I'd ever see you as family after everything? You're mistaken. You're just parasites, scared for your future. Well, here's the truth. I don't forgive you. You're nothing to me. And Henry, don't bother with the husband card. I'm divorcing you. That's non-negotiable. Henry's pitiful attempts to justify his actions, claiming it was all in the name of protecting our future, fell on deaf ears. His excuses only underscored his greed and complicity in his mother's cruelty. Bruce, equally disgusted by Henry's behavior, reaffirmed his decision to disown him, declaring that Henry's inheritance was forfeit, regardless of any attempts at reconciliation on my part. Standing my ground, I announced my intention to divorce Henry and claim what was rightfully mine in the settlement, ensuring he was held accountable for his role in this mess. Their continued apologies became mere background noise as I focused on my own resolve. The moment I left, with my friends by my side and Henry halted by Bruce's stern warning, was liberating. I couldn't afford Kayla a final glance. It was time to move on from the toxicity that had trapped me for so long. This departure wasn't just an escape. It was a declaration of my newfound strength and autonomy, a closing chapter on a painful segment of my life, and the beginning of a journey toward healing and self-respect. Eager to erase the memory of Kayla's cruelty, I chose not to involve the police. With Bruce initiating the divorce and disowning Henry, legal battles seemed unnecessary. They were already facing the consequences of their actions. Bruce had evicted them, and without a prenuptial agreement in Kayla's favor, she had no claim to his wealth. Kayla's misconduct was exposed by her colleagues at the charity foundation, leading to her dismissal. Henry lost his position in his father's company and any hope of a significant inheritance, leaving them to consider me, of all people, as their fallback. Given my stable job and finances, Kayla's audacity to seek help from me under the guise of familial bonds was swiftly met with a firm denial and the threat of legal action should they attempt to contact me again. In time, I settled into a new home, navigating the early stages of independence as the divorce proceedings unfolded. Henry, lacking a prenuptial agreement and faced with the undeniable evidence of his and his mother's misdeeds, conceded to the division of his assets with little resistance. Once our divorce was finalized, I invested in a modest apartment, a tangible symbol of my fresh start. Henry's subsequent struggles, juggling multiple jobs to support his uncooperative mother, seemed to him an unjust reversal of fortune. His attempts to reconcile were met with dismissal from me. Their ongoing hardships served as a prolonged retribution, a consequence of their own making. Now, with the dust settled, my life has moved on to a peaceful chapter, mirrored by Bruce's recovery from the ordeal. Henry and Kayla, however, are living out the natural consequences of their actions. It's a fitting resolution to a tumultuous period. This slow burn of a turnaround underscores a profound shift in our fortunes, highlighting the lasting impact of choices and the eventual realization of justice.